Hello, everyone. And thank you so much for attending this gifted meeting today. Today, we are going to discuss what I like to call the dark side of gifted education. As we all know, that especially in our school district, that gifted identification is not proportional to the student body. And we are going to discuss that today. And we are also going to discuss ways that what we can do as educators to help rectify this issue. Okay, today I want to bring attention to a persistent and deeply rooted issue in education, the underrepresentation, of Black and Brown students in gifted education programs. Despite decades of reform and conversations around educational equity, students of color, particularly Black and Latino students, continue to be overlooked when it comes to advanced academic opportunities. This presentation will explore why this disparity exists, what factors contribute to it, and how school leaders and educators like you and I can take meaningful action to change this tragedy. My goals are to examine the data, analyze the root causes, and highlight promising practices. Before we can understand the equity gaps, it's important to understand how gifted education works. As you all know, as gifted educators, we identify through referrals from parents or teachers, as well as their standardized test scores. However, oftentimes these methods, they do introduce bias in the gifted testing process. So understanding the biases will really help us understand the barriers that we are facing and help to rectify them. So let's look at the numbers. While Black and Latino students make up a significant portion of the public school population, they are consistently underrepresented in gifted programs across the country. This graph shows the comparison of the total students enrolled in school versus their enrollment in gifted education programs. There is a large disparity between Black and Hispanic students enrolled in gifted programs, while their white and Asian peers are largely represented in gifted education programs. This is a reflection of how opportunity is unequally distributed. When students of color are overlooked for gifted services, it limits their access to advanced instruction, enrichment, and long-term academic advantages. This data shows us that this isn't a localized issue, it is a national trend and it's persistent. So think to yourself, why does this keep happening? That's what we'll explore next. So if you look, you see the blue bar shows how many students are enrolled, and the orange bar shows their representation in gifted programs nationally. Black students are 66% less likely than white peers to be assigned to gifted programs, even when math and reading achievements are equivalent. Hispanic students are 47% less likely through the gap, though the gap disappears when controlling for academic scores. So here's what the community has to say about these disparities. Behind every data point is a lived experience. Teachers have shared their concerns about lacking proper tools to identify gifted students of color. Many have said they feel unprepared to look beyond traditional behaviors of giftedness. Researchers, I'm sorry, like Dr. Donna Ford, have long pointed out that gifted programs are still among the most segregated and inequitable practices in public education. And students themselves also say they didn't even know gifted programs existed or that they could be tested for those programs like their white counterparts. These voices remind us that the barriers aren't just academic, they're cultural, structural, and deeply personal. Let's talk about why this disparity exists. One of the biggest contributors is reliance on teacher referrals for gifted. In our school district, we use the Renzulli as a teacher referral process. Now, as we know, the Renzulli is completely subject to our opinion as educators, whether or not these students should be referred for gifted testing. Oftentimes, our own biases stop us from advocating for gifted students in this referral from Black and Brown students in this gifted referral process. Additionally, the tests we use also are standardized assessments like IQ tests or the Georgia milestones and things of that nature. And those tests have been studied for testing biases for many, many years. However, we continue to still use those assessments. Those tests are more geared for a white test takers to succeed. And it has so many research over the years have been surrounding around these tests, and so many researchers have advised educators to stop using these measures. However, we are way behind the ball with continuing to use these measures in our school system. And also, let me just add to that last slide that teachers have said themselves that they think that sometimes the Black and Brown students maybe not be able to keep up in those classes. So that is stereotypes and their deficient thinking when it comes to their own personal biases. So the data is powerful. When school systems use universal screenings, testing every student instead of relying on teacher referrals, we see a dramatic increase in the number of Black and Brown students who qualify for gifted services. In one district, representation nearly tripled. Bias training also plays a huge role. Teachers are trained to recognize giftedness in students from diverse cultural backgrounds, are more likely to equitably refer students. And when students of color are placed with teachers who look like them, the likelihood of being identified increases. Therefore, teacher bias training, as well as hiring teachers in these school systems that look like these students we will see great numbers to rectify this issue. So, based on the survey that we took before this presentation or this meeting, these 5 questions really stood out for me when it comes to reflecting on our gifted referral processes in our school district. And so I would like to take a second to think about the answers that we gave for these 5 different questions as it relates to the next 3 students. We can just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down or even type in the chat just our opinions on how we would how we would view these students in our class, would we or would we not identify these students as gifted learners or someone who should be referred for gifted testing? So for the next three slides, we are going to meet three different students and just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you think that this student should be referred for gifted testing. And let's try to be honest with ourselves. That's what this practice is about. Okay. Meet Nick. This is what Nick had to say. You know, everyone thinks I'm just this troublemaker, but they don't see the real me, the one who's bursting with ideas, who sees the world a little differently. It's like I'm sitting in class and my brain is a race car on a racetrack that's way too narrow. I get it. Miss Graves wants us to focus on the material, but can't she see that I'm just trying to make things more interesting? It's not that I want to be disruptive. I just can't help it. When I hear her drone on about whatever historical data or dates we're supposed to be memorizing this week, my mind takes off on these wild tangents. I start thinking about how that date could have changed if someone had just made one different choice. What if we turned our assignment into a film or a comic? I mean, wouldn't that be 1,000 times cooler than writing another report? It's always, Nick, why can't you just focus? But it's not that I can't focus, it's that I can't fit into this tiny little box that she has for me. So if Nick was sitting in your classroom and he's seems to be spaced out, he seems to be disinterested, he's not clearly not the teacher's favorite. Do you think, and be honest on your own day to day in your classroom, do you think Nick would be someone who stands out for a gifted testing referral? Okay, we got a thumbs up. Okay, we got two thumbs up. Absolutely. Nick seems to have more of an imaginative personality. And as we should know as educators, that the gifted students are not always going to be your favorite. They are not always going to be your teacher's helpers. They are not always going to be the one that has your back in the classroom. Sometimes those students will be the ones that are spaced out. They may seem bored. They may be disinterested in your lessons in class. All right, let's meet Morgan. Okay, here's the thing. I might not be the best at math or spelling, and sometimes I get mixed up with my times tables. But they're doing a funny dance in my head. But you know what? That's totally fine. I have this superpower, my imagination. Sometimes the other kids don't understand. They're busy with their numbers and words, and I'm over here drawing castles and dragons. Miss Minturn thinks I should focus more on my reading. And I try, but when I read, my mind just starts wandering off to worlds filled with magical creatures and adventures. One time, I made a whole book of drawings about a girl who saves the day with her paintbrush. She could make anything come to life. I wanted to share it with the class, but my hands got all sweaty and I got scared. What if they laughed? What if they just didn't get it? What do you think about Morgan? You can type in the chat or you can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If you had this silly imaginative kid in your class and she is not showing this great academic progress along with everyone else, unfortunately, because she's saying the timetables get jumping in her head and sometimes she just doesn't get it. However, she does have all of this imagination. How do you think you would refer Morgan for gifted testing? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Yes, someone says there's a lack of imagination amongst those kids today. I absolutely agree. Imagination is definitely a characteristic of someone that should be referred for gifted testing. She has, again, the creativity that we are looking for when it comes to those gifted students, as well as she does show a little bit of motivation, even though she's nervous, but she does want to share her ideas with the class, and she does want to share her thoughts on the things that you're learning and things in the classroom. She's just a little scared. So I think maybe oftentimes we can see students like this as being not able to handle the gifted classes with their other counterparts. However, if Morgan is moved to a class where she feels safe and she feels allowed to be herself among students who are like herself, then she could blossom and bloom just like she should. Every child should have the opportunity. Okay, our last student, let's meet Tyler. All right, Tyler, showtime. Time to bring out the class clown. They love the jokes, the funny faces, and all those crazy impressions. It's like my superpower. But honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm just hiding behind all the silliness. See, most kids think I'm just the funny guy, the one who makes everyone laugh when Dr. Pichelle starts her math lessons. I mean, who wouldn't want to hear a joke about dividing pizzas? But the truth is, I actually get the math. Like I can solve those problems in my head while I'm cracking jokes. But if I show them that side of me, what happens? They might not laugh at my jokes anymore. It's weird, right? I want to be known for being funny, not for being smart. I've seen how kids react when someone gets too serious about schoolwork. They even roll their eyes and start teasing. So I put on this act, and it works. I get to be the life of the party, the one everyone wants to hang out with. Now, I know we've all had a Tyler in our class in the past. I've had a few Tylers over the years. And sometimes it can be annoying to have a kid like Tyler in your class. They have the tools that they need to be successful, but they are more concerned about being cool, being popular, being the class clown. And let me tell you, that is really a characteristic that we see in our Black and Brown students in 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 African American and Hispanic culture, it is very much a goal to just be cool and to be the kid that everyone likes. No one wants to be the smart one because for whatever reason you get picked on or they think they'll get picked on. So we see this often in our classroom with these students. However, with this child being, the one that again may not be our favorite, he still shows that he may be academically superior to his peers because he may be acting out because he is bored. So give me a thumbs up or thumbs down and think about your own classroom. And over the years when you've met kids like Tyler, have you or will you refer this child for gifted testing? Okay, we got a thumbs up. Okay. Yes, I have had a Tyler in my class, and this Tyler, uh, he actually was dual, 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 dual. I can't think of the phrase. Anybody remember the phrase where you
Exceptional.
Thank you. Dual exceptional, where he did struggle with reading, but he was extremely gifted when it came to math and all those things. And I noticed this Tyler very early on that he did not want everyone to know that he was actually smart. And I referred him for testing and he qualified. And at that time, at the school that we were at, a lot of teachers did not think he had what it takes, but he actually did. So I think that is a great example of, first of all, not letting our biases get in the way and also looking for potential in these kids that look this way that we may not see in kids that in their white peers in the classroom. Okay, so as we begin to wrap up, I am going to give you a call to action. Let's ensure gifted programs reflect the diversity of our schools. Let's recognize and nurture brilliance in every zip code and classroom. And let's commit to equity and not just policy, but in practice. So, for the exit ticket today, I want you to think about the answer to these three questions. What barriers exist in our current practices, in our school, in our classrooms? How can we how can we begin these changes at the classroom, school, and district level? And what strengths can we build on as a team? I'm going to give you guys the link to the Google form. You can complete these 3 exit ticket questions. It's really just, what you think, how you feel, to further reflect, and then we can discuss at our next meeting.